All right, let's talk a little bit next about the plates of the multi-rotor. Okay, the Holy Bro X500 is designed to be used, change exposure, there we go. Designed to be used kind of a sandwich design. So they have a top plate, a bottom plate, and those will be sandwiched with the arms in between. If that makes sense. I know it's hard to all fit this in the camera frame, but you can imagine the arms going on the corners here, in between, and then we'd have kind of like a sandwich. Once we get those pieces in there. Okay, so identified on the sheet as well, you'll see top plate and bottom plate kind of demonstrated here, but sometimes it helps having a video that's in color and 3D and stuff as opposed to just the diagram here. So easy to remember, the plate that has X500 V2, the motor numbers on it, that's the top plate. Okay, so that's the plate that's going to be on the top of the copter. We're not really attaching anything to this plate, at least in this class, but it is the top of the sandwich assembly there. Okay. The bottom plate has different holes in it than the top plate, as you can see. There's these kind of elongated teardrop shaped holes. There's these double holes here on the bottom, top and bottom. There are these circular holes here. And there's one hole I want to pay particular attention to, this one right here. Okay. We'll talk about why that is here right now. Okay. So you can see here that I have some electronics already onto this plate. So I'm going to take these off for a second, where we can talk about how it works. But basically what we're doing in this class is we're using, we'll say, race quadcopter type parts, as opposed to like a full pick stock, if you're familiar with what that is. And we're using that for our build. I think it's really nice because it gives us a nice clean build where everything's inside the sandwich. But it's also nice because we get to practice some soldering, which you guys are practicing already, and use some of those skills in building our quadcopter. And it's also less expensive than the industrial pickstock, so we can actually fit it on the course feet. Okay, pull this out. All right, so the bottom plate here, you'll see it's, you could use it either direction really. There's not really a top and bottom of the bottom plate, if that makes sense. There are sides, so these sides you'll see in the instructions from Holy Bro as well, where the landing gear pieces go, where they attach. So these are the two sides. You won't really want to have these front and back because that wouldn't, I guess you could do it, but typically landing gear's on the side. Okay. But we could put the screws through this way, or we could flip it over and have the screws go through this way. That doesn't really matter. Okay. Well, what I have here are some, let's see, M3, where'd they go? Here we are. You probably can't read that. M3 by 25. I'm using socket head cap screws. It doesn't really matter if you have socket head or not. I have these for you guys. Okay. And I have those screws running up through the plate. Okay. Then I have an M3 nut here, the base. You can see that. 1, 2, 3, 4 of those nuts. I would install those with Loctite so that these shafts here are nice and sturdy. They aren't going to get loose. They aren't going to wobble. That's really important for our flight controller and electronics to not have any excess vibrations. Okay. So you run those screws up. Put some nuts here on the bottom to keep the screws in place. Okay. At that point, you would then go ahead and install your electronics. Okay. I'll talk more about electronics in a separate video, but for now we're just going to throw them on here. Okay, like so. So on the bottom here, I'll show you real quick. This is our ESC, 4-in-1 ESC. You can see there's 12 pads, 6 on each side, 3 for each motor. And here in the back we have 2 larger pads. Those are for our battery lead. Okay, as well as a capacitor we'll put back there. Here's our flight controller. Okay. They're connected via this wiring harness, which we'll talk about in the other video as well. This is essentially our flight stack. Okay. Besides the motors and propeller, motor, propeller, and receiver, we don't really have any other electronics on board besides this stuff here. Okay. Now I wanted to point out this hole. Okay, and there's a reason for that. In your kit, you get this little black piece. It's kind of flexible. It's printed out of TPU, I believe. Okay, and this is an XT60 kind of holder device, if that makes sense. And it's meant to fit into this hole. I do kind of show you this in the instructions. Okay, but it probably helped if I showed it to you in this video as well, so I figured I'd do that. But the way this is meant to work is if you have your XT60, okay, so imagine our power leads coming off our ESC right here. They're going to come over here, and then they can go down through this hole because we'll typically have our battery mounted underneath the quadcopter. Okay, you can mount your battery on top as well. That's up to you. But the way they've designed it is to have the battery underneath the entire quad as opposed to on top of it. Okay, so this piece, if you look, it does have corners on one side that are rounded and corners that are more square on the other side. So we look at our XT60 and say, well, look, there's rounded corners and square corners. Okay, the way this is meant to work is, oops, sorry, wrong way. You would feed this through the piece, okay, once it's wired up and stuff, of course. Feed it down through here, and it's going to slide out through this bottom half here, if I can get it through here on camera. There we go. Okay, and once it seats in there, does that make sense? You would then be able to have this piece be installed in the frame piece here. And so on the bottom, then you have your nice handy XT60 ready to plug your battery in and go fly and stuff. And it kind of holds the XT60 for you in that location. Now, of course, if you have some wires in here, that'll be where you would have wires from here to here, of course, and that would help this mount stay in place. It's a little bit loose right now because I don't have any wires in there to put some pressure on the TPU. But that's the idea, is the plug would stick out right here. You'd be able to plug your battery in, ready to go. Okay. Now, we are going to make a little adapter in class as well, because most of our batteries actually don't have XT60s. They have XT90s on them. So it's debatable, per se, how useful this entirely is, since we don't have that connector on our batteries. I'll let you adapt that as you see fit, but that's what this piece is designed for, is to do that. Okay. Now, I mentioned that specifically because that hole's only in one corner. There's no hole over here. Okay. So if you want your power leads to go from here, just right over here to the hole and drop out, that's fine. If you wanted to have your ESC and everything mounted this way, there's nothing wrong with that. You can have the power leads go from here over to here and then drop out. It'd be a little bit of a longer set of wires. There may be a reason why you want to do that. I can't think of a reason, but just so you know, that's only on one side. So if you put your ESC and everything on this way, you're going to need to run the wires all the way over here, as opposed to just running them with a short jog here on that side. Up to you. Okay. Again, we'll have to use the XT90 adapters anyways, so we'll see how that goes in class, but that's what that piece is for. Okay. Hopefully that helps explain a little bit there.